Breaking news coming in. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has now tweeted on the strike in Poland. He's written, and I quote, "I spoke this morning from Bali with Polish Foreign Minister Rao and Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba regarding the explosion in eastern Poland. We pledge to remain closely coordinated in the days ahead as the investigation proceeds, and we determine appropriate next steps." So, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has now reacted to the missile strike that happened in Poland. My colleague Abhishek Jha for more details on this. Abhishek, now U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has also reacted to this missile strike that struck Poland. Give us more details on this.
Of course, it's going to happen because it was going to happen, in fact, because Poland had apparently called for a NATO meeting where some Article 5, with the Article 5 is citing that because it has a case where it can have some urgent consultation with other NATO members when it has some threat to its territorial integrity or is feeling insecure or there has been some foreign attack on its soil.
Right.
So in that context, Secretary Blinken's remark holds importance because soon we are going to have some declaration or some statement coming out from NATO members.
Right, Abhishek.
When they will be probably having some discussion over the recent missile that has fallen into Polish territory, though we are yet not sure.
Abhishek, we also have a managing editor, Zaka Jacob, joining us for more details on this. Zaka, so there was a missile attack in Poland's Zewodo village and the missile was identified as a Russian missile. And now U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has also reacted on this incident, and he said that he spoke to Polish Foreign Minister and Ukrainian Foreign Minister also. Now, all this comes amidst there's a G20 summit going on in Indonesia's Bali. How do you see this?
Oh, this is a huge development. The fact that a Russian missile has hit a Polish village in which 2 people have been killed. The Polish are so far adopting a very cautious approach. They are saying, and they have identified the missile as Russian-made, but so far they are saying they don't know who fired it, whether it was actually fired from Russia, whether it was fired by design, or whether it happened by accident. We have seen instances in the past, including here in India, where we had a missile being accidentally fired off a few months ago. So all these factors need to be established, whether this was indeed launched from Russia with the intention of attacking a NATO member. And I think the important thing, as Abhishek was also saying, is that the NATO Chapter 5 very clearly outlines that an attack on one is an attack on all. So I think that's the determination that NATO leaders will be making right now. You've already seen that picture of Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, and President Biden having an emergency meeting at 5 o'clock local time in Bali. Remember, this is the concluding day of the G20 session, and without a doubt, this will be the biggest talking point in that meeting. Remember, Russia has been facing battlefield losses in Ukraine, most recently with the loss of Kherson, the 3rd biggest city. So it could very well be that this is Russia's way of once again trying to assert itself as the victor on the battlefield, as the one that has the advantage on the battlefield. But like I said, this qualitatively changes the nature of this war over the last 9 months, because if a NATO member has been attacked, then there is no way NATO can be seen as not responding. But so far, the heartening thing is all parties, including the United States, Poland, and of course, you've heard from both the Ukrainian foreign minister and the Ukrainian president, all of them seem to be taking a very, very cautious approach indeed. So I think that is a good step. An emergency meeting of the G7 has been called. That will be happening on the sidelines of the G20. It'll be interesting to see what India's position will be as well, because remember, India so far has not taken a public position criticizing Russia. But if indeed it is established that these missiles, these Russian-made missiles, were launched with the intent of hitting a NATO member, then I think this changes the entire war as we know it over the last 9 months.
So Zaka, just yesterday only, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated India's long-standing position in favor of dialogue and diplomacy in Ukraine and Russian conflict. And today we are seeing this missile attack. So, and Ukraine has also claimed that this was done by Russia, as the missile was identified as a Russian-made missile. So, was it an intended attack? Can we say it was an intended attack on Poland, or Russia wanted to fire that missile in Ukraine, but because of the close proximity that Poland and Ukraine share, it mistakenly struck Poland?
It is entirely possible. It is entirely possible that, remember, just overnight, we've had Ukrainian cities also being hit, multiple cities being hit, including Kiev, where there have been more than a dozen attacks. So it's entirely possible that this was part of the missiles that were meant to hit Ukrainian cities, but of course, Poland borders Ukraine, and therefore it is entirely possible that this accidentally strayed off into Polish territory. So that is one possibility. The second, of course, is that this was never meant to hit Poland in the first place, that this was an accidental launch by somebody in Russia. Also, it is entirely possible this was launched from a third country. Remember, Russia has been selling its missiles to a number of countries around the world, including to Ukraine, which is, of course, which was part of Russia until 1991, part of the USSR until 1991. So it's entirely possible that this could have been fired from Ukraine as well. All of these are right now in the realm of speculation. I think the first and most important thing is to establish where these were fired from and whether these were fired by design, whether they were fired by intent to attack Poland or whether this was by accident. Because in that determination will lie the future course of action. If indeed U.S. investigators and other European partners come to the conclusion that this was launched from Russia with the intention of hitting a NATO member, then their response is going to be entirely different. Because, like I said, under Chapter 5 of NATO, NATO is bound by its Articles of Foundation to attack and to respond if any one member of NATO is attacked. But if it is established that this was by accident, it was a missile meant for Ukraine that accidentally strayed onto Polish territory, then the determination and the response would be a totally different one. So far, what we know is that there's going to be an emergency G7 meeting. NATO will also have an emergency meeting on the sidelines of the G20 to try and figure out how to respond to this. All parties, the important stakeholders, so far seem to be taking a cautious approach, including Poland, which is the affected country. The Polish president has said that they have not come to a determination yet on where this was fired from and whether this was fired with deliberate intent. They do know that it was a Russian-made missile. That is as much as what they are confirming right now. We know it's hit a village on the eastern border of Poland with Ukraine, and that 2 people died. There have been conversations between the Polish president and the president, as well as between the Polish president and the Ukrainian president. And I think the first big and most important determination that world leaders need to make is who fired this rocket and what was the intention behind firing this rocket. Was it a deliberate act to try and provoke NATO, to try and provoke a NATO member, and to try and attack a NATO member? I think once that determination happens, then we will see the next course of action.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zaka, for giving us all those details. And we have another breaking news coming in. Biden has